Welcome, I'm Lizzie Brooks, and today's class is yoga to help accept change. So a lot of us probably feel resistant to change, but change is the only constant. So looks like we're just going to need to find a way to embrace it. And with this yoga practice, I hope that we more fully can. So join me on your mat. So feel free to prop yourself up a little higher, maybe with a blanket or a towel. Place your hands gently on your legs. Just soften your shoulder blades. Lift your sternum about 1 millimeter up, just a little buoyancy in the heart. Take a full inhale and a big loud sigh out. Let the heavier stuff kind of fall off. Let's do that one more time. Inhale fully. Sigh out. Okay, come onto your back. Hug your knees into your chest. And lengthen out through that lumbar, rock slightly side to side. So just getting acclimated with our back body being on the floor, a little bit of this hip stretch. Keep your right knee in, extend your left leg. Take a deep breath in and out through the nose this time. Then we'll switch sides. So we were pressing into our ascending colon, and now with the left knee in and the right leg out, breathing, pressing down into that descending colon. So let's switch one more time. Hug the right knee in, left leg out, opening the left front of the hip, those hip flexors, and to the other side. A little more energy through that extended leg. Hug the knees in and bring the legs up. So already with this, start to point and flex. So through the ankles, opening up the ankle joint, which is really also good for the knees and the health of the knees. And then we're going to do something, and it's going to be different, and we're going to accept it because we're here on our own and we want to make positive shifts in our body. So we have this lymphatic system that doesn't have its own pump like the heart pumps the blood. So we need to shift and shake and change that up for our health. So I want you to start to imagine that from your shins down, you're in a pool of water, your legs are in a pool of water, and you're splashing. So this isn't like kind of taking the legs back and forth like this. This is a very relaxed ankle and a jostling. So we really want to jostle that fluid. This is great for varicose veins too. And we're working our fast twitch muscle fibers. So shake, 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 splash, splash, splash. I want your legs, I want your quads to feel tired with this. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, hug it back in and do your little rock side to side. If you're tired in the morning, starting to wake up, what we did just a moment ago, the hugging one knee in, then the other, and that kicking can be really nice to wake you up and get a little more energy flowing, a little more fluid flowing. Now from here, one of my favorite things to do is rolling. So take your hands below the knees, take your feet closer to your face, roll back a little bit towards the shoulders, and then roll up. And if you need a little bit more, you can press yourself up. So rocking and rolling, making your spine round as you rock back, round as you go forward. Then we're going to change that. When we come up, we're going to put the feet down and open the heart. So lift that sternum even more and get those paraspinal muscles active. Inhale. And as you exhale, round back. Then inhale, come up, lift the heart. Exhale, round back. Inhale, roll up. So this is a rolling cat-cow. So if this is too much to roll, stay still, stay seated like this and move the spine and the shoulders here. If you want to do it, exhale back, inhale, heart open, shoulders back. One more time, rolling back and coming on up. Lengthen up through the heart center, open up, and imagine your heart being more open and available to new situations, new growth. Now bring the soles of the feet together and take your fingertips back. If you want to support even with some blocks underneath the thighs, feel free to do that. Fingertips down, thumbs towards you, fingertips away. Lengthen up through your front body from the pubic bone to the sternum. Loop the shoulder blades onto your back. Lift up here and don't try to push the knees to the floor. Just allow your legs to be pretty softly open without your adding pressure of the legs down. Breathing here and just expanding and softening the lungs. Inhale is the expansion. Exhale through the nose is the softening. One more time. Inhale and exhale through the nose. Bring the legs together and you can cross at the shins, and however it looks for you to get into your child's pose, go ahead and make your way there. If you like to put a little padding under your knees for that child's pose, great. Knees can be together or separated or somewhere in between. Reach your arms forward, reach your hips back. Find that opposition of walking the fingertips forward and reaching the hips back, and add a little shift. So we're trying to shift out of just straight homeostasis, this place of just, this is where we are. Not really homeostasis, that's not the right word. Stagnant, maybe being stagnant. So shifting and changing, allowing that to occur. Same thing with opening our heart. When we're resistant to change, we can kind of hunker down and curl in. So we're opening up. Rise up to all fours, and with this one, I do definitely recommend some padding for the knees, even if you kind of pull your mat and fold it over a little bit. We'll come into our Chakravrikasana variations, and everyone's gonna have an option. So if balance isn't quite supreme today, don't worry about it. We'll start with just tucking the right set of toes underneath and reaching through the heel, pressing the hands forward and the hips back to open and stretch the back of the leg, just preparing for where we're going. Breathing here. Not collapsing at the lumbar, but drawing the organs gently towards the spine. Let's switch sides. Bring the left leg back, toes tucked, press forward and down with the hands to shift the body back towards that left heel and bringing space to the back of the leg. And same thing, we're talking about shift and change, those hamstrings, when they're tight, when our hips are tight, it feels a little tougher to change. Same thing with the heart, the whole body really. Lower the left knee down. Now we'll take a down dog before we go to those Chakravrikasana variations. So tuck the toes under, lift the hips up and back. If the heels don't touch, don't worry. I'm not even going to allow my heels to touch right now. It would feel probably too much for my nervous system at this point because the back of my legs are feeling tight. So I'm just going to swish and sway my hips a little side to side and invite a slow shift and change. So that's what this is about. This is slowly letting change enter the body. So we don't feel like we have to protect against it or harden against it. Just slow, easy acclimation to change. Now lower your knees halfway down to the mat. Let this be a core work transition where you're drawing your organs towards your spine. Sometimes in transition is when it's the hardest, and that seems to be even true here. Deep breath in. Exhale, lower the knees down. Let's take another juicy child's pose, reaching in that opposition, hips back, arms forward, deep breath through and out through the nostrils. Coming up to all fours. If your wrists are bothering you here, you can always come to in between the first and second knuckle and keep the wrist straighter if you like. Tucking the left set of toes, bring the right leg back. Plug the right femur head into the pelvis. So instead of trying to take it away and maybe collapsing, draw a little more in towards the midline. Maybe reach the left arm forward. I told you you'd have options, so if you want to keep that left hand down, you absolutely can. Breathing here. And finding now an inhale into the length. And an exhale, maybe rounding in. The elbow and knee could touch or come close or even pass each other. Inhale for your extension. Exhale, draw in. Inhale to lengthen out. And here's the last one. We're going to draw in, but this time if you can hug your thigh and your shin up and in, please do. Holding 3, 2, 1. Hand and knee come down at the same moment if that's possible and shift back into your child's pose. Now your option here is if you want to work a little harder today, then you can take a vinyasa here You can come to a held plank or even a forearm plank if you want to get off the wrists. You don't have to keep coming back to child's pose. I'm going to show the child's pose option. You can take it up a level if you want. We'll join back into the all fours positioning. Toes are tucked. This time left leg goes back. You're plugging in towards the pelvis, making sure you feel nice and sturdy, coming towards your center. Option to take the right arm forward. I like to turn my palm in, but if there's a way you like to turn the palm instead, that's just fine. Breathing. Staying here or taking your movement. Inhale. Exhale, round in. Inhale for extension. Exhale, round in. Inhale, reach out. Exhale, round in and grab a hug and hold if you can. Lift even the left ankle higher towards its own sitting bone. 3, 2, 1, and hand and knee come down at the same moment if that's possible. And here's your option. Child's pose, down dog, held plank, whatever, vinyasa or not, it's all up to you. As long as you're breathing through your movement or breathing through your stillness. So I took us into an asymmetrical movement because there's a lot of shift and change going on there. And the more we can practice that on the mat, probably the better we'll do off the mat. Now, I talked about coming to the forearms in that forearm plank before, and everyone's going to have an option. Some of us are going to start, so you can join me here. Let's all start in the same place where we have our forearms down. Fingers are spread gently wide, knees roughly below the hips, and we're just going to do a cat-cow here, which will limit our range of movement versus if we were on our hands. So I invite you to accept the change of the range of movement because your forearms are down. And then inviting you to come into the respect of what's happening for your shoulders and your back here because of that more limited range of movement and the change of the hand and forearm position. So find something of benefit for you here. And then from here, either staying here or if you want a little bit more, you can either walk the knees further back, tuck the tail, and hold in your knees down plank here, or lifting the kneecaps, working the quads, working even the inner thighs. And you can interlace the hands here if that feels better. Breathing. And now what are we doing? We're changing the heat in the body, the work in the body. And I want you to maybe try to embrace that and smile through it rather than just resisting it, because through this work is how we get stronger. And the way we get stronger is, well, we have to change to get that strength. Lower the knees down, everybody. Child's pose, vinyasa, held plank, you know your options. I would like to offer a rotational wrist movement here, maybe shaking out the hands, check in with the neck, the jaw, see where you're holding residual tension, and let that go. We're going to move into a downward facing dog, which I already like that pose for change just because it's not a full inversion where your legs are up, but it is an inversion of sorts because your heart is higher than your head. So enter this downward dog in a playful way. Like when you're a baby or a kid or a toddler and you're just hanging out and you're playing and you're letting your neck go, releasing the jaw. Shoulders gently away from the ears. And I invite a little more play here. Let's walk that left foot in and let the right leg rise. And then start to circle that right leg around. Now maybe the knee is bent for that circling, or if you want more challenge today, the leg is straight. The circle isn't fast, and it can be really small even. Make sure you find both directions, and if there's something you want to do, like I had this feeling intuitively that I wanted to bend that top knee and open there and press towards that painting that I painted about 20 some odd years ago. Breathing here. And slowly shift back into your downward dog. I'm purposely keeping you in this downward dog a little longer to get a little more blood flow to the brain, to get that inversion aspect. If you need to come out of it before the other side, please do. Let's take the other leg up and start our circle. The knee could be bent. The leg could be straight. This is a long lever, so if you are taking that leg way out to the side, those glutes are going to really have to work. That hip's going to have to work harder. So maybe stay in a smaller range of movement if that's better. If you bend the knee on one side and kind of pressed away, you might add that on this side if it feels like it brings balance to the hips. And what's going on in that lower heel? If it's lifted way high and you're condensing at the calf muscles, maybe let that go a little bit and get a little more stretch. Slowly transition back into that longer held downward dog position. Inhale here and exhale, lower all the way to the knees. Shift back into child's pose, but the forearms are down. Roll the wrists around again. Shake them out. Move the hands. Turn the palms up and just give your hands some love. They hold things, they grip things, they write, they type. All of the things your hands do. And now come up to a seated position, whatever works, and place both hands over your heart center. Breathing here. And right from your heart, feed love into the hands. And right from your giving hands, feed love back into the heart. You might even opposite hand on top, just so both hands get that direct heart love. I know it's kind of kooky and it's really like tree hugger, but when we give ourselves this patience, this love, this time, and we treat ourselves with the kindness we would treat others with, it's only going to make us feel better. Deep breath in. And sigh, shake that on out. Take your head around in a circle. So we were just in that downward dog for a while, so I want to make sure that we're releasing anything that we might have been gripping into in the neck, especially if that was harder work in downward dog. Sometimes we bring that into the neck. I like to move the jaw around. Check that out. Ooh, baby yawn. And now, to embrace even a more change, I'm going to ask you to take your downward dog. This one's actually not going to be very long, but in the opposite direction. So my head was this way, and now I'm going to take my downward dog this way. So we're getting out of our just habitual movement, which is also great for brain connections, making new neural pathways. Deep breath in, big sigh out. And instead of walking our feet towards our hands, we're going to, you guessed it, bend your knees, lift your heels, walk our fingertips back towards our feet, and take a very accessible fold. I'm going to go wider with my feet and add a little shift. This is also a place where a block or even a chair in front of you could be useful. Maybe just hands to the shins or the thighs even with bent knees. Hamstrings do not like abrupt change, neither does your spine. So nice and slow and steady. Find that liquid, fluid quality of yourself. And we'll rebuild our structure into gorgeous alignment as we bend our knees, drop our heads and arms, let them dangle, draw the organs towards the spine actively. So this will feel like core work and leg work as you roll all the way up. Resist the urge to straighten your legs here. Instead, wait until the torso and the head are much higher up to then straighten the knees, shoulders back. Sternum has that slight buoyancy. Again, it's not here. Pelvis isn't jutting forward. Breathing. And take your heels to the very, very back of your mat, something you probably aren't used to doing, and we'll all survive it, even though it's a change. Bring your hands to your heart. Find your breath. Unlock that easier part of your spirit, easier going self. Sometimes it's just making the decision, like, I'm going to be easier going. I have to tell myself that a lot. Now let's keep one of your heels, doesn't matter which one, aligned with the back. What is that? With the back of your mat. I'm sure it's really important that I take that off my leggings right now. And we're going to come into a balance. Now, I have a wall here. You might want to use a wall just in case. All we're changing is our stance. We're letting our one heel come to the back of our mat and one heel come to right in front of the second toe. You can even do the big toe if the second toe is a bit too much. Bring the hands to your heart or out to the sides or up, or maybe fingertips to a wall here, and breathe. This is a major change for the body and the brain. How often do you stand like this? One foot on front of the other like a tight wire? Not very often. So the brain has to find the body in space and start to map out where you are. Breathe. And no need to overreact, because if you fall out of it or step out and have to come back in, like, so what? We're finding a new skill. And now we're going to shift into that front foot and put the other foot in front, breathing here. And you might find that one foot in front is easier than the other. That has a lot to do with probably tension in the body, openness in the body, the brain. And the other thing is where you have your weight. So you can put your weight more in the front foot or more in the back or more evenly distributed. Play with that. And now we'll walk the rest of the way up with knee lifts. So the back knee is going to lift in and then set down, back into that tightrope walk. Back knee lifts up and in. Place the foot back on that tight line, tight wire. And we'll do that all the way back to the top of the mat. If you have longer feet, you'll get there faster. If you have smaller feet, it'll take a little more. And voila, look, we're right in this place in yoga where we're so used to being. Not a lot of change here, so I'm giving you a break. Come into the top of your mat. Find home base in your heart and in your breathing. And we'll do something that I want you to find very nurturing, very habitual. Because we've done so many changes, let's come to just sheer basics and comfort. Inhale, reach up. It's good to balance them. Exhale, fold, bend the knees any amount. Inhale, rise halfway up. Hands might glide up the shins. And exhale, fold. Take it back into your plank position and add what elements you want here. Is that element a vinyasa? Maybe it's a chaturanga or not. Your back bend could be a cobra or an upward dog. And we'll join back in that downward facing dog. Slow pedaling out. Again, just marinating in the space that you're slowly creating. And widen your stance a bit, just to change things up, the way that the hips feel, how that feels across the back of the sacrum. And you can either stay here, or we're going to do taps where we're going to take opposite hand to opposite toes or ankle or shin. I'm doing the shin right now. And you can shift further back and further forward with this, coming more into plank, a wider footed plank, then a shift, cross, tap back, plank, shift, cross, tap back. Or you can stay in that more downward facing dog position and just do your tap backs here with the hands. This is going to work the shoulders differently, the balance very slightly differently. Crossing under the midline instead of just staying in that same kind of front and back plane, but crossing to the sides. And then adding a twist here, widening your feet even further. Cross one hand over to the other side of one calf. And optional twist, open twist. So you want to make sure that you're rolling your scapula onto the back on both sides, pressing forward and down with that front hand. If this is too much, take a break, come out of it. Unwind, other side, crossing, rotating any amount. Shoulder blades onto the back rather than hunkering down. Breathing here, reach your sitting bones a little further back to the wall behind you if you want to increase the stretch. And front hand, or that hand down, and child's pose, you guessed it. Forearms down, roll around those wrists. And then from here, cross one hand on top of the other, and you might put your head down You can even stack fists like this to put the forehead down, but some connection where you're touching your head with some part of your hands. Maybe leaning down that far is too much, so you'll just put your hands over your head like this. And now give love from the hands into the brain. Breathe in. Breathe out what you don't need. Inhale, bring clarity and space. Exhale, breathe out resistance. Nice work. Downward facing dog. And we get to go back into habitual movement. Look forward, step or hop your feet to your hands. Inhale, rise halfway up. Exhale, fold. Choose how you'd like to rise and come all the way. Reach up, reach tall, and bring your hands to your heart. Deep breath in. And shake that all out. Bring your hands to your waist. Bend your knees into a chair pose. Step your right leg back into a high lunge, opening the front of that right hip, whoop, lengthening up through the spine. From here, take your thumbs closer together and roll your elbows back. Lift your heart any amount. You can stay with this, or if it feels okay, interlace your fingers and open your chest here. You don't have to look up. You could open your chest while still looking straight forward. Breathing for that expanse and that invitation to change and grow. Let the arms rise up. Exhale, hands come down, or rather fingertips. Now, keep your front knee bent just like this. Keep your hips low, working the legs. Step forward and create that chair pose again. Press into the floor. Inhale, come all the way up. Samastitihi, hands to the heart. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, rise halfway up. Exhale, bend the knees and keep the hips nice and low. Bring the left leg back and rise up into your lunge. We'll bring your hands to your waist. I think I did that a little differently, but the hands are going to land there eventually. And now draw your thumbs back, opening the left hip flexors there. Stay with that, lift the sternum. Maybe hands stay there, or interlace the opposite finger on top, which feels like a giant change. Like the brain is like, that's not right. It's not wrong. Lift your heart. It's just not habitual. It's just not something we're used to. Sometimes we think if it feels different, it's wrong. It's not wrong, it's just different, or maybe new. Breathing here. That expansive quality of breath, opening that heart chakra. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, fingertips down. And then from here, keeping your hips low and bringing yourself back into that chair pose. Feet don't have to be together. Press into the floor. Inhale, come all the way up. And we might have done that a little different. Exhale, hands to the heart. We'll live. Deep breath in and shake off your clutter. Kick it out a little bit. So we started with the shaking of the legs, and now we're going to do that a little bit more here. So shifting and shaking and kind of moving around. If you feel like when someone asks you to like kind of shift and shake and wiggle, that you feel like a robot and that feels really weird, then maybe you need to do it more often because it, right? This is awkward, but you're doing your thing and probably no one's even watching you, and if they were, they might wish they were doing it too. Take your feet wider. We're just going to do a little shift side to side. Boop, boop. Yeah, it makes that noise. Boop, boop. Shift side to side. Try not to think about it too much. Do want your knees to be pointing roughly in the same direction as your toes. I wouldn't want your toes out and your knees kind of torquing in. So roughly side to side here. All right, so we all have options. And we're going to pick a side, any side, and go over to that side. And either you're going to stay a little higher up and interlace your fingers on your thigh and breathe here, or if you want a little bit more stretch and you're going to go lower, and it'll probably take a little more strength too, fingertips down. Breathe here, wake up the inner thigh of the extended leg, and breathe. It probably is something we're not used to. And then, we got to go to the other side. So either fingers interlaced on the thigh or fingertips down. Again, you could use blocks, but not necessary. You can go right to that thigh if you want. Breathing here, waking up that opposite inner thigh. We're prepping for a twist. That is probably something you're not used to. We'll do a higher version and then optional lower version. So we'll go to the other side and we'll all be on the thigh. So whichever side you started with. And then from here, you'll take your hand to your knee. So I'm gonna tell you, mirroring you, okay? So if I'm bending my left knee, okay? Right hand to the knee, left hand to the waist, and twisting open towards the left. Maybe extending that back arm if the shoulder and pectoral muscles say yes. And coming slowly back, shifting high up. If I'm bending my left knee, my right hand comes to the knee or even the outside, right hand to the waist, twisting towards the right. Only extending that back arm if that feels good. It's probably not a twist you're used to doing. You're probably used to doing something more like this, something a little more symmetrical. Breathing here and slowly unwinding. Let's come back to center, kind of shake out that clutter of the hips, let go of the clutter of the mind for trying something new. Now, you can do that same twist again if that was the depth that felt right for your knees, okay, and for your quads. You can come into something maybe you're more used to if you need to come out of so much change for a moment, or we can go back into that with a little more depth. So shifting over to the first side, fingertips down. Now, instead of coming up and twisting, you'll keep your hand down that's kind of more towards the middle of the feet, but closer towards one, and twisting here. So from here, your left knee would be bent, right hand down, left arm up, breathing here. And if you want even more, you can actually take variations of prayer pose on the outside of the knee and twisting here. This is what we are working towards today. A big change. Back towards center, take a little pause in the middle, sway it out, let the pots and pans of judgment clamber down, let them go. They have really no space. They have no reason. They have a reason to be there because we're human, but they really don't have a benefit to be there. And then from here, we'll switch over to the other side that you didn't do. Optional high up, optional a little lower down with a twist, hand to the waist or back arm up. If that feels okay, prayer pose, tricep to the outside of the knee, and twisting here. That gets also into the abdomen in a really particular way that I think is helpful. And coming back to center. And heel toe the feet in and come on down to seated. Nothing fancy there. We just did all sorts of fancy schmancy, all sorts of weird and changeable stuff. So not fancy there. Come back to where you started. Bring your hips maybe higher up onto something. And breath. So we're going to come into slow, steady inhale and slow, steady exhale, letting the shoulder blades soften. We just did a lot of work in the hips, and we're going to soften those out a little bit and also open the hip flexors a bit. So take another deep inhale, sigh that out. Once again, take the head around in a circle, or maybe just a half circle, whatever feels good. Elongation, slowing down the breathing. Let the head hang down towards the heart. Admire the heart and its contents, and then keep that admiration as you roll the head all the way back up. Another sigh, shoulders release. So keep your I will mirror you guys. Keep your left leg in front, bring your right leg back. Now, how far you take that right leg back is going to dictate kind of the stretch you feel across the front of that hip. So if the knee is very close to the foot and this is more condensed, you won't feel as much than if you kind of take it more straight out, knee to the side, right, kind of in line with the hip. And then you'll breathe here. I do have the blanket underneath me. You don't need it, but you will be more on one sitting bone than the other. And then we're going to twist towards that front knee any amount. Maybe taking the hand to help you kind of get a little more leverage, fingertips down behind you, and breathing here. You don't have to turn your head all the way around to get a twist. So we're in a very slight twist with a big asymmetry in the hips. And how much you turn your head around, it's really kind of, as long as it feels good, that's where you should be. You can even keep your head neutral, kind of your nose in line with your sternum, and still be in a twist, just not the cervical twist. Slowly come back. Use your hand to help bring the legs a little closer together and bring the feet and knees closer together. Pause for a moment. Let everything draw back towards the midline. Little bit more of that feeling of central location, center line, breathing. And other side. I'm going to shift my blanket a little bit out of my way of that back leg. So right leg forward, left leg back. Again, checking in with how that back hip feels depending on how much you're pushing that leg back. And then twisting towards the front knee, very gently. You can play with activating that back leg a little bit more, pressing away, and seeing what you get as far as a strengthening in the glutes and an opening in the front of the hips. You can actually stay very relaxed here, or you can add a little bit more of that activity. Feel where you're breathing. So in this twist, I'm really feeling the movement of my organs, the displacement of the organs as the diaphragm moves, as the lungs move. Very slowly come back to center with the torso and use that back hand to come back into a seated position. My favorite breath, as many of you know, is alternate nostril breathing. I kind of couldn't care less about pranayama practices, breathing practices, for I think the first 3 to 5 years of doing yoga, like almost every day. Now I really know, especially in my 40s, I really know and can feel a huge shift when I'm in my breath, when I do these breathing practices versus not. And when you're the mother of a 13-year-old boy or girl or anyone, if you're a parent at all, if you have a stressful job, if you are taking care of pets, life, anything in life that causes you stress, if you're feeling stress, breath. I cannot tell you enough, come to the breath. So find a comfortable position. If seated does not feel comfortable to you, I'd like you to lay down at this point. And you'll use whichever hand feels better for you. Your thumb is going to close off one nasal passage and another finger of your choice is going to close off the other, alternating. So closing off your right nasal passage, I'm not going to mirror you guys on this one, and breathe slowly in through the left nostril. Close the left nostril, open the right, exhale. Soften the shoulders. Inhale through the right. Close the right, exhale through the left. We'll attempt to slow down a little bit. Inhale through the left. Close, exhale through the right. Inhale through the right. Exhale through the left. In left. Out right. Last one. In right. Out left. Both hands over your heart center or on your legs or in prayer pose, Anjali Mudra. Even breathing through the inhale and the exhale, Samavriti. So when science shows, so not just yoga books, science shows, and it can be shown on all sorts of labs and all sorts of, imaging. that when you are slowly inhaling and exhaling, you are going to create a better internal landscape. It's like we're just these walking petri dishes, and you will have a better environment inside. The more the chemicals that are helpful versus the ones that are less than helpful, and getting out of fight or flight so that we can rejuvenate and heal. And part of the reason we do alternate nostril breathing is because it takes a lot longer to breathe out through one nostril than just through the mouth, right? So we're slowing that down, among other reasons. Take a deep inhale and out through the nose. This one is a sigh. Inhale and sigh out. From here, I invite you to take a Shavasana. You might use that blanket underneath your knees or even rolled under your spine. You can take your legs up the wall or onto a chair or some pillows and releasing. So when we want change, when we want to invite the change, we need to invite rest, relaxation, and getting down to a more base level sense of self versus that kind of buzz above where we're kind of hovering above the ground. So let yourself pour onto the earth and note that we are more liquid than we are not. So go with that liquid quality, move out of rigidity and into release. Soften your belly. Let all of your tissues and organs ride your breath. Take a swallow and relax your throat and your jaw. And I invite you to stay here as long as you can. We only have one life in this form, so let's not waste it rushing, demanding, overexerting, only to burn out in the end. May we find that release where when change comes at us, we can more so embrace it with open arms rather than push back against it. Thank you so much for being here, and just my hat is off to you for all the change that you've had to embrace in your life and all that you will continue to embrace. Thank you so much for being here. If you found this video helpful, please hit like, please subscribe, and let me know in the comments what types of practices you like to see and what is helpful for you on this channel. Thank you so much. Namaste, everyone.